Welcome to this special reflection on spiritual well-being and the sanctity of our homes. Today, we're going to explore something truly important that affects every single one of us. Have you ever walked into a room and felt something was off? That inexplicable heaviness in the air, that sense of discomfort you can't quite put your finger on. Well, according to spiritual wisdom that even Pope Francis has acknowledged, certain objects in our homes might be attracting negative energies that affect our peace, happiness, and spiritual growth. In a world filled with distractions and spiritual challenges, the Holy Father has repeatedly emphasized the importance of creating spaces of peace and divine connection. While Pope Francis is known for his progressive approach to many issues, he remains deeply committed to spiritual well-being and the battle against negative influences in our lives. Today, we'll explore 7 items that spiritual advisors close to the Vatican have cautioned against keeping in your homes. These are objects that might seem innocent at first glance, but could be opening doors to negativity and spiritual disruption. In your sacred spaces, before we continue, I want you to take a moment and look around your living space. Do you feel completely at peace? Is there harmony in your household? Or do you sometimes experience unexplained tension, arguments, or a general sense of heaviness? The answers might lie in some of the common items you've kept without realizing their spiritual impact. This isn't about fear or superstition. It's about awareness and making conscious choices for our spiritual protection. Many faithful Catholics and Christians around the world have found that removing certain items from their homes has led to remarkable improvements in their family harmony, personal peace, and spiritual connection. Now let's explore these 7 items that Pope Francis and spiritual leaders have cautioned about. As we go through this list, remember that intention matters greatly in spiritual matters. Sometimes it's not just the object itself, but the energy and intention behind it that can bring negativity into our sacred spaces. The first item on our list might surprise you because it's something many of us have in our homes without giving it a second thought. Broken objects that we refuse to fix or discard. You might wonder how something so simple could have spiritual significance, but think about it. What message are we sending to the universe when we surround ourselves with broken things? Pope Francis has often spoken about the throwaway culture, but in a different context. He criticizes our tendency to discard people and relationships too easily. However, when it comes to actually broken objects, holding on to them can represent stagnation and an unwillingness to embrace renewal in our lives. These broken items, whether they're cracked mirrors, chipped dishes, torn clothing, or furniture that's falling apart, create a subtle message in our subconscious that we accept brokenness, incompleteness, and dysfunction. From a spiritual perspective, these items can become repositories for negative energy. They interrupt the flow of positive vibrations in our homes and can even symbolize broken aspects of our lives that we're refusing to address. In his teachings about stewardship and care for our environments, Pope Francis reminds us that how we treat our surroundings reflects our inner spiritual state. By clearing out these broken items, we make room for wholeness and renewal. It's a physical action that has profound spiritual implications. It declares to the universe that we are open to healing, restoration, and God's completeness in our lives. When you remove these broken objects from your home, you might be surprised at the immediate sense of relief and lightness that follows. It's as if you've lifted an invisible burden that was weighing down your space and your spirit. So take a moment after this video to walk through your home and identify those broken items you've been holding on to. Ask yourself why you've kept them and consider whether it's time to either repair them properly or respectfully let them go. This simple act of stewardship can be your first step toward creating a more spiritually protected and positive home. Environment. The second item on our list touches on something that might seem controversial at first, but bear with me as we explore it with nuance and spiritual sensitivity. Certain types of artwork or decorations depicting dark themes or violent imagery. Now, I want to be very clear. This isn't about artistic censorship or dismissing the cultural or historical value of art. Rather, it's about being mindful of the images we choose to surround ourselves with daily and their subtle influence on our spiritual atmosphere. Pope Francis has frequently spoken about the power of images and how what we consume visually affects our hearts and minds. In his encyclicals, he emphasizes the importance of beauty that elevates the human spirit rather than imagery that glorifies violence, excessive darkness, or spiritual confusion. The imagery we place on our walls, shelves, and tables does more than just decorate our space. It creates a constant visual and energetic frequency in our homes. Artwork depicting violent scenes, demonic imagery, or symbols associated with negative spiritual practices can, according to many spiritual advisors, create doorways for negative energy. These images work on our subconscious mind even when we're not actively looking at them. Consider the difference in how you feel when you walk into a room filled with images of natural beauty, divine inspiration, or family love versus walking into a space dominated by dark, chaotic, or disturbing imagery. The energy is palpably different. In his ministry, Pope Francis has consistently encouraged us to surround ourselves with beauty that points toward the divine, imagery that uplifts, inspires, and reminds us of our higher purpose. This doesn't mean all art must be explicitly religious, but rather that it should affirm life, dignity, and spiritual values rather than glorifying darkness. Take some time to evaluate the artwork and decorative items in your home with fresh eyes. Ask yourself, does this piece bring light and positive energy into my space? Does it align with the spiritual values I want to cultivate? Does it make me feel peaceful when I look at it? If the answer is no, consider replacing it with imagery that nourishes your soul and supports the spiritual atmosphere you want to create in your home. Sometimes the simplest changes in our visual environment can create profound shifts in our spiritual well-being. Moving on to our third item, we need to address something many people keep in their homes without realizing its potential spiritual impact: objects with unknown histories or second-hand items that might carry emotional baggage. This is particularly true for antiques, inherited items, or objects from estate sales and thrift stores. While reusing items is generally positive, and Pope Francis strongly advocates for environmental stewardship through reduced consumption, there's also a spiritual dimension to consider when bringing previously owned objects into our sacred spaces. In many spiritual traditions, including aspects of Catholic teaching, objects can absorb and retain the energetic imprints of their previous environments and owners. An item that witnessed trauma, conflict, addiction, or turmoil might bring traces of that energy into your home. This doesn't mean we should never purchase second-hand items or accept family heirlooms. That would be wasteful and disconnect us from our heritage. Rather, it's about being discerning and taking proper spiritual precautions. Pope Francis has spoken often about discernment as a key spiritual practice, urging the faithful to thoughtfully evaluate influences in their lives rather than accepting everything without reflection. This wisdom applies to the objects we bring into our homes as well. If you have items whose histories you don't know, or if you sense a heaviness around certain inherited objects, consider having them blessed. In Catholic tradition, the blessing of objects is a powerful way to cleanse them of any negative associations and dedicate them to a positive purpose in your home. You might also practice a simple ritual of cleaning these items while praying over them, asking for any negative energies to be removed and replaced with peace and blessing. Pay special attention to jewelry, mirrors, and furniture, which in many spiritual traditions are thought to be particularly receptive to energetic imprints. Trust your intuition. If a second-hand or inherited item consistently makes you feel uncomfortable or seems associated with family discord, despite its material value or sentimental attachment, it might be worth reconsidering its place in your home. The fourth item on our list is perhaps the most common yet potentially the most spiritually disruptive presence in our homes today. This one item has quietly infiltrated nearly every household, often sitting in the very center of our living spaces, and yet its spiritual impact goes largely unexamined. I'm talking about certain types of entertainment media, particularly those that glorify violence, occult practices, explicit sexuality, or mock sacred beliefs. The television, computer, and various screens in our homes are portals through which energy flows into our living spaces. Pope Francis has repeatedly warned about the influence of media on our spiritual lives, urging the faithful to be vigilant about what we allow into our minds through these channels. He has specifically cautioned against media that degrades human dignity, promotes materialism, or normalizes behaviors contrary to spiritual growth. When we regularly consume media that depicts darkness, whether through violent movies, certain types of music with destructive messages, video games that reward virtual harm to others, or content that mocks faith and sacred values, we are essentially inviting that frequency into our homes. The images and sounds literally vibrate in our living spaces, affecting the spiritual atmosphere long after we've turned off the device. This doesn't mean all entertainment is problematic. There's wonderful, uplifting media that can inspire, educate, and bring healthy joy to our homes. The key is discernment and intentionality about what we choose to stream through these powerful portals in our living rooms and bedrooms. Consider implementing some spiritual boundaries around media consumption in your home. This might mean designating certain spaces as screen-free sanctuaries, establishing family guidelines about content that aligns with your spiritual values, or creating rituals around turning devices off to reclaim your space for prayer, conversation, and authentic connection. Pope Francis has often emphasized the importance of creating space for silence and divine encounter in our busy, noise-filled lives. By being more conscious about the media we bring into our homes, we protect these precious opportunities for spiritual connection. Take an inventory of the shows, music, games, and content that regularly fill your home environment. Ask yourself honestly, is this bringing light or darkness into my sacred space? Would I feel comfortable engaging with this content if Jesus were sitting beside me in my living room? These simple questions can help guide your discernment about the invisible but powerful energy that media brings into your home. Now let's move to the fifth item on our list, one that may surprise many because it relates to something seemingly innocent and often sentimental. Certain gifts that were given with negative intentions or that came from troubled relationships. This is perhaps one of the most subtle ways negative energy can enter our homes, because these objects often come disguised as gestures of affection or celebration. Pope Francis has spoken extensively about the importance of intention in our actions and relationships. He reminds us that genuine love seeks the good of the other, while relationships based on manipulation, control, or negativity create spiritual distortions. This wisdom applies to the objects that enter our homes through these relationships as well. Consider the gifts in your home and the energy behind them. Was a particular item given to manipulate, to create obligation, or during a time of conflict? Some gifts come with invisible strings attached, representing attempts to control rather than genuine expressions of love. Other objects might have been given by someone who harbored jealousy, resentment, or other negative feelings toward you, even if they maintained a pleasant facade. In many spiritual traditions, including aspects of Catholic folk practice in various cultures, the intention behind a gift is believed to transfer with the object itself. This doesn't mean we should become paranoid about every gift we receive, but it does suggest we should be attentive to our intuitive sense about certain objects in our homes, especially if they're associated with relationships that felt draining or harmful. If you have gifts that remind you of painful interactions, manipulative relationships, or people who consistently brought negativity into your life, consider whether these items serve your highest good by remaining in your space. You don't need to make a dramatic display of discarding these objects. You can simply thank them for whatever lesson they brought and respectfully remove them from your environment, perhaps donating them where appropriate so they can find a new context free from the previous energy. In doing so, you create space for gifts and objects that truly carry loving energy and support your spiritual well-being. Remember that your home is your sanctuary, and you have every right to curate its contents based on the energy they bring to this sacred space. The sixth item on our list requires particular sensitivity and spiritual discernment. Religious or spiritual objects from other traditions that you don't fully understand or that have been removed from their proper cultural context. This isn't about religious intolerance. Pope Francis has been a powerful advocate for interfaith dialogue and respect for diverse traditions. Rather, it's about the spiritual principle of intentionality and proper understanding when we bring powerful symbolic objects into our homes. In his teachings, Pope Francis emphasizes the importance of approaching other traditions with respect, rather than treating their sacred elements as mere decorative items or curiosities. Religious symbols, statues, ritual objects, and spiritual tools carry concentrated energy and connection to specific spiritual traditions. When we display these items without understanding their significance or proper care, we risk creating spiritual confusion in our homes, or in some cases, showing unintended disrespect to traditions we may actually admire. This applies to objects like Buddha statues, placed in inappropriate locations, Hindu deities used as decorative conversation pieces, Native American dream catchers hung without understanding their purpose, or ceremonial masks and tools removed from their ritual context. Even items from your own religious tradition, if damaged or displayed inappropriately, can create disharmony in your spiritual space. For Catholics and other Christians, religious items that are blessed, such as crucifixes, sacred images, and sacramentals, should be treated with special care and respect. If they become damaged, there are proper ways to dispose of them rather than simply throwing them away. Pope Francis reminds us that authentic spirituality involves integrity and sincere engagement, rather than superficial adoption of elements from various traditions without proper understanding. This doesn't mean you can never appreciate art or objects from other traditions. Cultural appreciation with proper respect and education is beautiful. The key is to approach these items with genuine reverence, proper knowledge, and appropriate intention. If you have religious or spiritual objects in your home from traditions other than your own, take some time to learn about their proper use and significance. If you can't give them the respect their tradition calls for, consider returning them to practitioners of that faith or finding another way to respectfully rehome them. By doing so, you create more spiritual clarity in your home environment and show true respect for the diversity of the world's spiritual traditions. And now, we come to the seventh and final item on our list, one that Pope Francis has specifically addressed in his teachings about simplicity and spiritual freedom. Excess, possessions that lead to clutter and attachment to material things. While this might seem less dramatic than some of the other items we've discussed, the spiritual impact of clutter and excessive materialism can be profound and far-reaching in our homes. In his encyclical Laudato Si and many of his homilies, Pope Francis warns against the throwaway culture and the spiritual emptiness of consumerism. He teaches that an excessive attachment to possessions not only harms our planet, but also suffocates our spirits and distances us from God and authentic relationships. Clutter in our homes creates stagnant energy and can become a physical manifestation of unclear thinking, indecision, and spiritual heaviness. When our spaces are overcrowded with items we don't need or truly value, several spiritual problems emerge. First, we become caretakers of our possessions rather than focusing our energy on our spiritual growth and relationships. The constant visual noise of clutter can also make it difficult to find the inner silence necessary for prayer and connection with the divine. Additionally, holding on to excess often reflects a scarcity mindset rather than trust in God's providence and abundance. Pope Francis calls us to a liberating simplicity that makes room for what truly matters. He reminds us that Jesus taught detachment from possessions as a path to spiritual freedom. This doesn't mean we should live in stark, empty spaces devoid of beauty or necessary tools for daily living. Rather, it's about mindfulness regarding what we bring into our homes and why we keep the things we do. Consider walking through your home with fresh eyes and asking yourself about each area. Does this space feel peaceful and supportive of my spiritual life? Are there items here that I haven't used or enjoyed in years? What am I holding on to out of fear rather than genuine need or joy? The process of thoughtfully decluttering can be a profound spiritual practice, a concrete way of creating space for God's presence and practicing trust in divine provision. Many who have embraced this spiritual discipline report feeling lighter, more peaceful, and more able to focus on what truly matters in their lives. As we conclude our exploration of these 7 items that may bring negative energy into our homes, I want to emphasize that this isn't about fear or superstition. Rather, it's about creating intentional, sacred spaces that support our spiritual well-being and connection to the divine. Pope Francis consistently teaches that our faith should be lived practically, affecting every aspect of our lives, including our homes and the objects with which we surround ourselves. The items we've discussed: broken objects, disturbing artwork, objects with unknown histories, negative media, gifts with bad intentions, misused religious symbols, and excess clutter all have something in common. They represent ways we might unconsciously allow discord, heaviness, or spiritual confusion into our sacred spaces. By addressing these items with discernment and intentionality, we take practical steps toward creating homes that better reflect God's peace, harmony, and light. I invite you now to take some time after this video to walk through your home with prayer and new awareness. Notice any items that seem to carry heaviness or that don't align with the spiritual values you want to cultivate in your living space. Trust your intuition. Often, we know deep down which objects don't serve our highest good, even if we've been reluctant to acknowledge it. Remember that creating a spiritually harmonious home isn't about perfection or following strict rules. It's about growing in awareness and making conscious choices that support your journey toward deeper connection with God and others. Every small step you take to clear negative energy from your home creates space for more light, peace, and divine presence in your daily life. If you believe in the importance of protecting your home spiritually, write Amen in the comments and share this message with someone in your family who might benefit from this awareness. After all, our homes are not just physical structures. They are sacred spaces where our faith is lived out in daily moments of love, service, and divine encounter. Sometimes light enters our lives when we remove from darkness the things we've insisted on keeping. May your home become an ever brighter reflection of God's peace and presence in your life. Thank you for joining me in this important reflection today.